What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you come in and check out the content. And with that being said, man, I ran across this video, right, of John Salley, former Detroit Piston, also played for the Chicago Bulls at one time, probably a couple other teams, right? And John Salley had some real estate in Detroit from when he played for the Pistons. He had some real estate, a mansion, and it was up for sale. And the original asking price for this real estate, this mansion that he had, was $9 million, right? And he wound up selling it for 800,000, right? So just check this out. So the asking price of this real estate was $9 million, and he winds up selling it for 800,000, less than a million. That's and so this just to me just proves that well, it's another example of how the system is rigged against athletes and entertainers, right? Because this he's not the first person that I've seen go through this. Like Michael Jordan had a mansion in Chicago, and it sold for millions less than what he originally wanted to. He tried to sell it for now. So they appraised these properties at one price, and then they let them sit on the market for so long that the athletes or the entertainers, whoever own them, had to take a big, drastic cut, right? And this happens to athletes all the time. It happened to 50 Cent. He had a mansion, right? And he wound up selling for a whole lot less than what it was appraised at, and even what he paid for. So if this happens every once in a while, that's I guess it comes, it's part of doing the business, right? But almost every athlete who buy real estate, or who has some type of investment property or something like that, runs into this issue. So this to me just lets me know that it's more so of a it's not by accident, right? And so let me play the audio. This video, this is from the Real Estate Insider, right? He spoke, and shout out to him, Real Estate Insider. But it's just like I said, just think about it as this is not a isolated incident.
This mansion was offered for $9 million, nearly 35,000 square feet, hand carved woodwork, marble, pubic tile, a private chapel, and an NBA champion once called it home. On paper, Bishop Mansion was a $9 million masterpiece, but hidden behind all that marble and carved wood was a financial problem the listing photos couldn't show. Because buyers wouldn't give the owner what he wanted, the price came down, the mansion sat, and eventually, one of Detroit's most extraordinary private homes ended up somewhere trophy mansions aren't supposed to go: the auction block. And when someone finally bought Bishop Mansion, the number was so low it completely changed the story of this house. But before we get to that number, there's something else you need to know. This wasn't just some forgotten Detroit mansion. John Salley bought it while playing for the Detroit Pistons. Celebrities partied inside these rooms. Teddy Riley and the R&B group Guy were connected to one of the mansion's most memorable nights. And Sally would later tell an even stranger story about living here. He thought the place was haunted.
All right, so now, and what you'll find, every time one of these pieces of property is up for sale, they'll give you some excuse as to why the property is not selling for the way it should, or what it should, right? Michael Jordan, they told him that his property was too it was customized, right? It was too customized. It was too much. He had his logos and all this stuff on there. And Michael Jordan did try to take some of that stuff out of there, right? Same thing. Shaq was selling a piece of property the same way, right? and they was like, well, because you have it customized, that's going to decrease the value. They always give you some type of reason for why it's not selling for what it really should sell for. And now with this house right here that John Salley owned, they try to say it was haunted, right? So they will go to they'll go to every extent just to be able to get over. And you don't even know if like the real estate people that you hired or that John Salley hired to sell this property, you don't even know if if the realtor was in on this, right? Because this happens far too often for it to be just like I said, an isolated incident. Now they talking about, the property was to maintain the property or it's haunted and all this other nonsense.
But ghosts weren't Bishop Mansion's biggest problem, because the real nightmare wasn't hiding in the hallways, it was hiding in the cost of owning 35,000 square feet of history. The taxes, the utilities, the maintenance, the restoration, all for a mansion with an incredibly small pool of potential buyers. And that's what makes what happened next so difficult to believe. Because after being offered for $9 million, Bishop Mansion eventually changed hands in 2026 for approximately $800,000.
That is crazy. So it was on the market for 9 million and went all the way down to 800,000, right? That's crazy. That's just, it's robbery basically is what it is.
Less than 1/10 of that former asking price. So what happened? Why couldn't one of Detroit's most spectacular mansions find someone willing to pay anywhere near $9 million? Why did it end up at auction? And most importantly, was 800K actually a bargain? Because by the end of the story, that price may not look nearly as cheap as it does right now. To understand why, we have to go back to the beginning. Because Bishop Mansion was never built like a normal house.
Yeah, and so like I said, they and so he goes into really talking about how the mansion, like how the maintenance of the mansion, and that comes with every house. Like every house has plumbing, electric, and they have a roof. So eventually, all that stuff is going to have to be upgraded. Eventually, all that stuff is going to need repairs and stuff like that. But they'll tell you this stuff, man, and like I said, it's just not isolated. I can just name so many athletes and entertainers who have bought houses and went through this. What's the guy name used to play for the Antoine Walker bought he bought property because he didn't want to, when he's with the Boston Celtics, he wanted some investment property. So he bought a ton of property. And basically they try to make it look like, he lost all his money gambling and all this other stuff. When I just think it's basically, in my opinion, just a setup. It's a setup. So when these athletes come into these millions and millions of dollars, they're basically, their power is being a consumer. They're not allowed to compete in the real estate market like that. Just because you have millions of dollars, you're not allowed to compete in the market like that. And I know just so many athletes who just really who go through this. Entertainers, rappers, all these people just go through it. And just because you have a lot of money don't mean that you are a businessman. It just means that you're a consumer, right? And the thing about that is once athletes and entertainers understand that and they realize how they are being frozen out of the market, and not able to compete. And that's basically why, I think I wanted to talk about this, because if you're not able to compete in the market, then that's what you are. You're just a consumer. And once they realize that, then I think that athletes and entertainers will spend their money. They'll spend their money differently, because if John Salley know that he have a piece of property that's worth, if he knew ahead of time, all he was going to be able to get was less than $1 million for a piece of property that's worth $9 million. And, you know, nobody in their right mind would purchase that. And so these are the kind of, you know, videos I think that will help these athletes and entertainers before they go out there and spend all that money on, you know, on a house and basically get robbed, man. And it's crazy. And they'll give you, and like I said, so many different excuses, you know, the maintenance, you know, it's haunted, it's customized and all this other nonsense, man, when all this is by design. So that's my take. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, and I'll check you all out in the next video. Peace.